missed that. Welcome back, awesome people, to Cocktails and Consoles. It's Melissa, and if you're looking at this noir setup and wondering, did LA Noire release a sequel? I wish. No. Today we are actually talking about something that none of this would seem relevant to: zombie killing. Yes, we are talking about Resident Evil 2, the remake, which I don't know if the developers were going through my personal diary when they found out that my deepest love would be Leon Kennedy in a white button-up, but God damn, did they deliver. And I'm sure 75% of you have no idea of what I'm talking about, but the 25% of you that bought the Noir expansion pack, oh, so pretty. God, even Claire is doable. So yes, with Resident Evil 3 Remake coming very fast on our heels, that sounded bad, I thought the best thing to do would be to give Resident Evil 2 Remake its own cocktail by remaking our Resident Evil 2 cocktail. Yes, many moons ago, God, I feel old, we did a cocktail in honor of Resident Evil 2 called Raccoon City Sunrise. Yes, it is based off of a tequila sunrise, and I thought with the remake, we would follow the same vein and kick it up a notch. Now, in the original version, I kept the recipe pretty true to the classic, which is the tequila sunrise. And let's be fair, kind of a boring cocktail, if I can be so bold as to say. It's basically tequila, orange juice, and grenadine. Not bad if you're just starting out with tequila, but as tastes and times evolve, you kind of want something a little bit more, which the developers of the Resident Evil 2 remake definitely heard us loud and clear when they did the remake. But there were three ways that, as glorious as the remake was, it definitely fell short of the mark. So hang in there, and we're gonna give the Resident Evil 2 remake a pros and cons review. But to get our cocktail started, we are going to start off with the base. Now the base we're gonna keep pretty simple to the original in that we are gonna use some maraschino cherries. You can use Luxardo cherries if you want to break the bank. They're wonderful. I absolutely love them, but let's be real, they're expensive. So now we're going to take these cherries and we're just going to give them a good muddle. If you don't have a muddler, that's fine. I don't at the moment. Plus they're a pain in the ass to clean. So I'm just going to use a fork. Really what we're looking to do is just break these cherries up a little bit, release some of the juice, and add to the gore factor a smidge. Now I am going to add to the base just a little bit, not with grenadine, but with just a little bit of maraschino juice. Next, we're going to take our tequila, and we've stepped up the tequila a little bit on this one. This one is El Padrino, which I wish I knew what that stood for. I wanted something with a little bit of sophistication, something leaning towards a mezcal, which if you have never drank tequila before, a mezcal, shorthand to say, is gonna taste a little bit smokier, which is going to make the tequila a little bit more present in this drink, which is what we want. Because otherwise, it's just like drinking a screwdriver with tequila. Not the best. Now everything else in this is already pretty chill, but this is not. So we're gonna pour in about 2 ounces to our shaker with ice, lid on, and give it a swirl. Now we're not looking to dilute or to add air to this, we're just looking to rapidly chill this. So the bigger the ice cubes you have, the better. The reason for that is the bigger the ice cubes, the less that they're going to melt. Now before we add that into our drink, we are going to add the orange component, which for that we are going to use San Pellegrino Sparkling Orange. I believe this one is actually clementine and peach, so it's going to add a little bit more sophistication of flavors. Plus, and this is critical, it's going to keep things rather translucent. Now we don't want to lose a lot of those bubbles, so we're going to hold it on its side when we pour. Now we're not gonna stir this anymore because again, we want those bubbles. But we want the tequila and the San Pellegrino to come together a little bit. Then we're gonna carefully pour this into our drink. Now last time we did this, we actually froze these in ice and it added a nice touch, but something was lost in translation. So this time around, we have our lychee with a maraschino cherry in the middle. Stick that into our drink. So that way now you can actually see it through the glass. Finally, we're gonna top off the top with just a little bit of Angostura bitters. Not so much for the red, more so for the flavor, because we want to add a little bit more flavor to this pretty basic drink. And there you have it, all the flavors of a tequila sunrise with a little bit of sophistication. Cheers. That is lovely. Immediately you get the tequila first, which is kind of what I want out of a tequila sunrise. But then it smooths it and rounds it out a little bit with the orange, a little bit of the bubbles. You still get a little bit of the cherry juice coming through and a touch of the bitters, which adds a nice nasal component to it all. So for those of you guys who have watched me for a fair bit of time, it's no mystery at all that I love Resident Evil 2. It is my most favorite of the Resident Evil titles. And the remake knocked my socks off a fair bit. But even I have to admit, it did fall short in some pretty critical areas. So for those of you guys who watched my Resident Evil 7 video where I gave a critical look at the game and how it stood up to Resident Evil as a lore, let's take a look critically at the Resident Evil 2 remake. Now, suffice it to say, the remake did some things extremely well, and we have to give it credit. Honestly, it's a lot of the reason why I'm really excited for the Resident Evil 3 remake. I've never been a fan of Resident Evil 3. I agree with a lot of people, it should have been DLC for Resident Evil 2, if such a thing were available at the time. I don't know, I just never found Jill that interesting of a character. But with the remake, I have some high hopes for this one, and it's all thanks to the Resident Evil 2 remake and what it did well. So the first thing that it did well, I think we can all agree, finally, the tank controls are gone. Hallelujah! I don't know how long we've been waiting for this. For myself, the biggest challenge of playing Resident Evil 2 is that I hate moving like a Panzer tank. Really? I'm fighting a city of zombies. My legs work. Why would you make it more difficult to get through a city? And for those of you guys who are experts at tank controls, congrats! Join the army! I'm not one of them! The other thing that I think the remake did really, really well is it knows that you know. For those of you guys who have played Resident Evil 2, it likes to troll the hell out of you. It knows what you're expecting. It knows when you're expecting it. It lets you think that it's coming, but delivers it later. And honestly, troll props to the devs, nicely played. You had me gripping my chair, walking through that hallway, just waiting for the cutscene of something to drop down over my head, and it didn't happen until later. Until I felt safe, until I thought I knew what the police department was all about. Finally, I would say one of the greatest things about this remake is, especially given the fact it's 20 years past, you don't have to have played the original to be able to enjoy it. And that, I think, is a hallmark of any remake. For those people who have never played the original, you don't feel like there's anything lost to you playing the remake as if you were playing the original the first time. Yet, it still rewards the people who have played this before, and everyone feels like they got their money's worth out of the game. Alright, now that we've given Resident Evil 2 Remake a giant ego, let's bring it down to size, because there are 3 very significant ways where it just didn't satisfy. The first, and I think everyone can admit to this, if you played the original and you played the remake, the lack of A/B scenarios it's devastating. I don't know what they were thinking when they decided not to do an A/B scenario, but it definitely not only hurts the replay value, which is pretty significant, especially in this day and age when it takes a long time to get a game out the door. You want as much replay value as possible, but there is no difference between scenario A and scenario B. The only difference is the face of the character and the sound of the voice. Very disappointing, because a lot of the value of especially the early Resident Evil games was that you felt you had 4 times the game because of how you played it. If you played A or if you played B, you could control the experience that you got. Very disappointing on this one, especially because going through the A/B scenarios, now I did play the canon, Claire A, Leon B. I found it disappointing. I think Claire has the best interaction with Birkin the first time, and Leon definitely has the best interaction with Marvin Branagh. The problem is, all of those are A scenarios. B scenarios, you're really not given anything new. Congrats, you have more time with Mr. X. Enjoy going through regurgitated content for no reward. The second place where I think the remake really fell down is the loss of the critical moments. I think for a lot of us who played the original, not having the big introduction to the liquor really took away from the impact. In those particular scenarios, it brings up the third place where I think the game has really fell down on, is that even though it does give a good experience for people who've never played the original before, it definitely leans on you knowing the original story and the original game. The incorporation of the liquor, if you don't know what the game is, almost feels like a throwaway moment, where in the original, it was such a huge moment. I really wish that they had brought some of that back to the remake, to at least for people who've never played the original, to give them that kind of feeling. And then finally, for those of you guys who watched my Resident Evil 7 overview, this should not come as a surprise. I was very disappointed in the fact that there was practically no dodging in this game. For as annoying as tank controls can be, if you knew how to do the controls, you at least had the ability to dodge, which in the very beginnings of all the Resident Evil games, it was all about avoid rather than attack. But there was no dodging in this one. You almost had to become supernatural at the controls to even attempt a dodge. I honestly feel it was really a slap in the face to the story to not allow people to be able to dodge. Where in its place, what the expected behavior became is that you had to know how to make the most efficient route through everywhere. So that way, if you had to take a zombie down, you didn't have to walk into that room 10 minutes later and it's back on its feet. But all of that said, I still have very high hopes for Resident Evil 3, the remake. Now, I have watched no demos, I have watched no playthroughs. So when we start playing it through on Fridays, it will be a fresh playthrough. So join us next Wednesday as we don in our Jill, strip our best, with a cocktail shot all her own. And join us on Fridays as we start a full playthrough of Resident Evil 3 Remake. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, you want to hit the subscribe button. The videos will show up in your playlist. If you enjoyed this video, throw me a like, and I will see you, awesome people, in next week's Resident Evil 3 Remake cocktail. Cheers!